Never waste a tragedy. Some of the greatest things that will ever happen to you begin with tragedy and to society as a whole. And here's the logic. Most of us live inside a box, a comfort zone, routine, certainty, safety, and it's very uncomfortable to leave that box and do something different. Do something that maybe creates waves, that surprises people. Also, we have another issue. We're a little bit lazy. Who has the energy to really try to change the world? But then tragedy strikes and it shakes open the box and it forces us to become someone we never would have become otherwise. We've lost our comfort zone. We're out in the open. Judaism has a remarkable doctrine. It's called Gam Zu Latova. Means this too is for the good. And as strange as it seems, and as unimaginable as it seems, and it's not because it's callous about tragedy. It's not. We know how to mourn as well as anybody. And it's not because tragedy is good, but because it believes that something good must be buried inside of it. Because we believe that life is not random. We are all here for a mission. There is divine providence. There will be a day of judgment. So inside everything, there's something divine waiting to be discovered. I'm not saying it happens for reasons we understand. I don't have the chutzpah to try to look at other people's tragedies and give it meaning. And many of them are horrific. Many questions have no answers. We're comfortable with that too. But we ask a different question. Not why me, but what now? Let me share with you a remarkable story. Never heard a story like this. About a man, Joseph Eckstein. He was a young Jewish Hasidic, very devout member who grew up in Brooklyn. He was so devout, he never learned English. He spoke Yiddish. He didn't go to school, so he didn't know math, science, fundraising, running in a corporation. Gets married, young, naive. His wife's expecting a baby, Mazel Tov. A few months later, 4 months later, the baby starts acting funny. They take him to the doctor. The pediatrician looks at him, calls in another pediatrician. It's a group, a third. They're pale. They go into another room. They're talking. They come back. Mr. Eckstein, your son has Tay-Sachs. Tay-Sachs, a disease you probably never heard of, is a horrible disease. Principally hits people of Ashkenazi Jewish DNA. It's something that's passed down generationally, and it's fatal. Children die between 3 and 4 years old. It's very sad. What do parents do? They give it over to a hospital. There was one hospital in Brooklyn, Kingsbridge Medical Center. Sometimes there was a year waiting list to get into it. There were so many children with Tay-Sachs. They would take care of the child till it died at 3 or 4. They sadly did that. It was a terrible disaster. A year later, they try again. This time, wife becomes pregnant, healthy pregnancy, baby's born. 4 months in, baby starts acting strange. Take him to the doctor. Deja vu. Mr. Eckstein, your child has Tay-Sachs. It happened 4 times in a row. He buried 4 children in 4 tiny plots in a cemetery in Brooklyn. After the 4th child is buried, he went home and he had no more answers. His rabbi had no answers. Nobody had answers for him. He huddled up in bed. He barely left it for a year. After a year, he came up and now he was angry because tragedy often kindles anger. And he says, I'm going to do something that's impossible. I will make sure no other children ever die from Tay-Sachs. And what was his logic? For a child to have Tay-Sachs, both parents have to be carriers. If one is, you don't have Tay-Sachs. He starts a testing system. He convinces people, right before you get engaged, take this test, or when you're dating seriously. If both of you are carriers, you have a good chance of having a child with Tay-Sachs. Find somebody else. He goes from school to school. He speaks about it by congregations. People are like astonished. They never heard a thought like that. It's 20 years later. It's spread throughout the entire metropolitan area. It's gone through other cities, almost every place where there are Jews of Ashkenazic descent. He told me, it's 50 years later. He says, I went back to the Kingsbridge Medical Center when they closed the wing for Tay-Sachs because there were no more children with Tay-Sachs. he had eradicated the disease. One person didn't speak English, didn't know math, didn't know science, had no way of running an organization. That's the power of what a tragedy could kindle. The anger creates something, the outrage that otherwise would never happen. And it's in nature we find that also. There's only one time in our entire universe that we know of that a precious gem is made by a creature. And what is that? The pearl. But here's the story. How does something as amazing as a pearl happen? It comes from a tragedy, something painful. A fish, a predator, tries to bite through the shell, gets its tooth in through the shell, difficult job, and then leaves because it can't open it. But it pierced the shell, and now there's water dripping in. And the home of the oyster is about to be washed out. The oyster will drown. What does he do? He goes to the spot of that shell, and he starts emitting a viscous fluid to block the hole. If it's a small hole, small pearl. Large hole, larger pearl. The larger the hole, the larger the pearl. The pearls come from tragedy, from a reaction. If there was no accident, if there was no predator, there is no pearl. We've seen this in so many places. It's the eve of World War II. Most of the Jews in Europe will be killed. A very courageous Englishman, Sir Walter Linton, creates the kinder transport, and he transports 10,000 children over a few month period, the eve of the war, back to England. These parents are abandoned by their parents. The parents knew they would die, or many of them suspected they would. 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-olds. These are the most traumatized children imaginable. What do we think of them? They will be on psychologist couches the rest of their life. What could possibly come of them? But then people started to do studies. What happened to the children of the kinder transport? And it's astonishing the amount of lords and doctors and scientists. In fact, here's something amazing. 2 Nobel Prizes come from those children. A 6-year-old boy, Arno Penzias, he would win Nobel Prize in Physics for discovering the echoes of the Big Bang. Well, now that we know of the Big Bang, it's from a child of the kinder transports. Another child, Walter Cohn, whose parents and sister were all butchered and then burned to ashes in Auschwitz, he survived the kinder transport. He wins the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for developing density functional theory that transformed quantum mechanics and complex material science. But here's what's amazing. Do you know how many people it takes to produce one Nobel Prize winner? 8 million. Google it. That's the math. Out of every 8 million people, there's one Nobel Prize winner. In the kinder transport children, there were 2 out of 10,000. The odds of that happening, it's 160,000% over the regular population. Unpredictable. And history changed. Why? Because these survivors of tragedy found something in themselves, some rage, some deep drive, some purpose. The Japanese have a word for it also. It's called kintsugi. It's when a precious vase drops and shatters. Oh my God, that was from the Ming Dynasty. They take it and they make some type of a concoction made out of gold and some other pottery, and they glue it back together. But you can see the golden seams. And this to them is the most beautiful pottery that there is. And that pottery is your and my heart. Your and my tears are that pottery. Think about Cindy Leitner. Her daughter Carrie was killed by a drunk driver. She could have lived only with grief, cuddled into a ball and cried. But what did she do? This is a regular mom. Just a standard, soccer practice, 4-wheel drive, minivan mom. What does she do? She's so outraged. She finds out that the person who killed her daughter had many other drunk driving convictions. And there's nothing in the law that would punish him seriously. 18 months later, he's driving again. Could you imagine that? And she said, this has to stop. What does she do? This mom, no experience running organizations, speaking, collecting. She creates MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. She becomes a heroine and a superstar. Millions of lives have been changed because one mother refused to let tragedy be the final word in her life, but on the contrary, she took these ashes and she turned them into diamonds. So Judaism asks, not why did this happen to me, but rather, what can I build from what's left? Where can that tragedy create in me nuclear energy that will allow me to do something I never could have done before? This is the doctrine of Gam Zu Latova. We never deny tragedy. We never minimize pain. But we believe in divine providence, and it dares to ask one final question. Can the ashes become diamonds?